The reason why people struggle with self-doubt, self-sabotage is because our unconscious mind is always listening to the promises that we don't keep to ourselves.
When you train yourself with cold water, that's exactly what you're training yourself to overcome and do every day. It's just, I'm going to go and meet the discomfort, not with panic, not with some feeling of negativity. Jesus chose water to baptize people in. That's the symbol that he thought would make the most sense about becoming a new person, adopting a new identity, and really stepping into a better life, was getting into water and submerging all the way in water.
Stephen Haynes is a former triathlete, biohacking enthusiast, and founder of Fjord Cold Plunges. I've cried a handful of times after doing a plunge.
Yes, it can be a beautiful release. It demands 100% of your attention and presence. All of us are going through life at such a pace and with so much stress or demands that we bury a lot of our true feelings. And when you get in there, you finally go into the body and you get connected with everything that's inside. Sometimes you get surprised by what's there.
It's just surrender. What part of disempowerment does cold water specifically help to transcend?
This is kind of probably an unexpected answer here, but
so there's unique wisdom in hot, and specifically today we're talking about cold therapy, because it is therapeutic in the way that it cleanses and heals and essentially resets our energy field. That's more of a spiritual and emotional conversation when it comes to cold therapy, rather than just brown fat and science and mitochondria. Have you considered this?
Everything is tied together, right? Your body, your mind, your psychology, your emotions, and your spirit.
Yeah.
We're all just one being. And people oftentimes, including myself, make the fallacy of thinking that everything is separate. You know, I'm going to train my brain over here. I'm going to train my body in the gym. But everything ends up feeding one another. And it's just this whole biological, beautiful cycle. So I found, for me personally, that there is a huge spiritual benefit to spending time in nature, period. And when you're in water, submerged in water, especially cold water that you feel even more and it's activating your body even more, you're really in nature. There's no technology around. I've had all kinds of prayer time and cold plunges that's been really meaningful. I've had insights come to me. I've had visions and like revelation style things. So yeah, I think that it's not to be overlooked as just something that's like a biohacking tool.
Yeah, well, if they're doing these in Norway and across the world, and when I say these, I mean the fjords, look at how many things, even beyond just cold therapy. I know we're talking about cold therapy today, but think about how many bodies of water in religious sects or in ancient times, people would go into the river, like the Ganges River, or people would go into the river and the water would actually cleanse them. I get my best thoughts or my best, downloads, if you will, when I'm either doing cold therapy or in the shower. There's something about water that cleanses our etheric field and resets us. So for people out there that are struggling with anxiety and depression, this isn't medical advice, but this is definitely a supplement that's going to allow somebody to stop ruminating on the past or being in fear of the future. What do you make of this, the rumination and the fear of the future when it comes to the cold, which makes you be in the moment? There's no other where to go when you're in the cold plunge. You have to be there.
It demands 100% of your attention and presence. And it puts you into a parasympathetic state versus a state of sympathetic distraction, where all you're doing is thinking of the next thing or the thing in the past or the whatever it is that's your worry for the day. I mean, it just removes it. For the period of time that you're in this beautiful cold water, you are there and you're present with it. And you're in, like you said, you're in your body, right? It's an embodied experience. Like you can't just mentally think about feeling 45-degree water all around you. It's something that you have to go and have as a lived experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's immediate too. It's not like you have to do 30 minutes of meditation to get into a clear state of mind. You just get in and it's non-negotiable. It's biology.
Yeah, I find that if I'm in my mind and I go into the fjord, it's going to be pretty hard for me, because when I'm in my mind, I have attention in my hands. I want to control where I'm at. But when I can get out of my mind and actually just be in my body and just allow that long, slow exhale, like, a lot of times when I'm in the fjord in doing cold therapy, I've done the sauna beforehand. But even if I haven't done the sauna beforehand, it's that same, I guess, vagal tone response where we all feel a bit of fear about the cold water initially. Almost like it's a rational fear. You know, we wouldn't want to be in the cold water for a day. We would probably die. But it's that little embracing of the shock and then using our own neural system to calm ourselves down. I think that skill set of emotional regulation that's learned in the cold water, I haven't found a place that it's hit me that hard yet.
Yeah.
What's your sense on this? The emotional regulation in cold water and the way in which we breathe and calm ourselves down. How does that work out for you personally? Has that transcended into other areas of your life, this emotional regulation through the cold?
Absolutely. In a huge way. One of the things that I think of maybe people wouldn't realize, it's not obvious, is, when you get into cold water, especially if you get in up to your neck and get part of your face tissue and your lower jaw in the water, it activates the mammalian dive reflex, which stimulates the vagus nerve. And again, happens to everyone. It's just biology. You don't have to think about it. And when this happens, you go into a parasympathetic state. Your breathing slows down, your heart rate slows down. Ooh. And the result is you feel more calm, more relaxed, more at ease. It's just a beautiful tool that you can use. And it's non-pharmacological. It doesn't require drugs or pills.
Yes.
It's natural. We can talk more about all those things and sort of some of the biology as to why that happens. But absolutely. I think it does change one's emotional state.
How has it done that for you? Like, for example, running a business and growing a company like Fjord. So it's on the screen right now, you guys, some of the images of the Fjord. And it's a daily tool for not just physical health, but for emotional fluidity, I guess you could say, or emotional resilience. There's this term called anti-fragile. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yes.
And anti-fragility means that, like a strong reed in nature, it'll bend, but it won't break. And I find from a hormesis standpoint that the more I place myself in challenging conversations with my wife, or in the cold plunge, or doing a long walk with a weighted vest, or tending to my children when I'm super tired but still being patient, like all these stressors, they create eustress in the body, but distress is totally separate. So how have you managed the distress in your life from the adaptability in eustress that you've learned from the cold?
Been huge for me because I think it comes down to choice as well. There's so many components to this. Part of it is, I think, psychological, which is, even for experienced cold plungers, there's always some tiny, tiny voice, but the voice gets smaller and smaller the more you do it, that's saying, I don't know, maybe today you don't need to do the cold plunge.
It's too cold outside.
It's cold outside.
I've definitely had that voice creep up.
It's going to be cold in there.
Yeah.
And it's going to be uncomfortable. You always have this, and it doesn't really go away. But the beautiful thing that what we're talking about is you actually build up this confidence and this resilience mentally and psychologically, first of all, that just says, you know what, I'm going to choose. I'm going to opt into this. I have this might be helpful for your users. I came up with this thing that is the concept of 4 walls. Okay. When cold plunging, you have an opportunity to break through 4 different walls when cold plunging. The first wall comes at the decision of standing there at the cold plunge before you even get in. It's the decision to get in. If you decide, I'm going to go through and break through that first wall, and I'm going to just mentally decide I'm going to get in. That's as non-negotiable. I'm not negotiating with myself. I'm going to make this happen when I say we're going to do it. So you build up that mental toughness. You get through that first wall. Second wall is actually stepping into the cold plunge, getting at least part of your body wet. Maybe you sit down and you're in there. Okay.
Yeah.
The third wall is immersion. So going up all the way up, let's say to the neck or to the shoulders. So you're fully in the water. You've overcome that step. Then you stay in for a little bit, and some duration of time will pass. Maybe it's 30 seconds, maybe it's 2 or 3 minutes, but you'll eventually hit that 4th wall, which is the first time that your mind is telling you, okay, I'm cold, I'm uncomfortable, it's time to get out.
Yeah.
And you have an opportunity to push through that 4th wall and stay just an extra 30 seconds, an extra minute. Just see, hey, let's just push ourselves a little bit more today. And the more and more someone does these types of practices and overcomes these walls, translates over into, you get a distress, email from your boss that was unexpected, that's unpleasant. You have a fight with your spouse, you get cut off in traffic.
Yeah.
And your reaction time is so much better in terms of not having to just be so reactive, but just be more adaptive and calm and cool. I already overcame 4 hard things this morning.
I love the 4 walls. That's the first time I've ever heard it described like that. That's really good. On the screen right now is an image. I think it's a really powerful one. It's about the Hans-Selye stress adaptation syndrome. And you can see that there's a bell curve on the screen where the right amount, the Goldilocks zone of eustress is really good for you. But if you have too much distress or long-term chronic stress, that's where disease and illness
Yes.
and rheumatoid arthritis and all these different, basically the body attacks itself, right? That's what autoimmune is. And so I think about this sweet spot for me. Do you find that this sweet spot exists uniquely for men versus women? There's a lot of information out there that say, women should cold plunge, they shouldn't. I think it's very unique to the person. I don't think we should just put men and women in two tanks and say, just do it like that, because we have no idea of their stress curve.
Absolutely.
What's your thoughts on that from your research, from the many, many people that have already purchased and used the Fjord all the time? What are the women saying about the cold therapy versus the men?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, both things you said are true at the same time. One, there is a biological difference in the stress response to cold water between men and women. It depends on where the woman is in her monthly cycle. And
that makes sense.
Yeah, very
that
much.
Makes perfect sense.
It very much depends on this. And even within that, the second thing you said is true, which is each individual woman is going to react to it differently, both from a mental and psychological standpoint, as well as a physical standpoint.
Yeah.
But for example, one of my influencers that works with our brand is Lindsay, Animal Based Bay on Instagram. And she's one of the early influencers that we started working with that's been using the Fjord for a year and a half. And she constantly is posting on her own about how she thinks that this whole stuff about women shouldn't cold plunge is just a fallacy. She's like, I'm doing it all the time. I'm doing it on my period. I'm doing it all throughout the month. And I'm just feeling great. It makes me feel great every time. On my website, we created a research-backed blog post that we can link to this if you would like to, where people can go, and it's all about cold plunging for women. It guides you through how to plunge at what duration and temperature based off where you are in your cycle for like what science says would be the most optimal for you. Because what women are battling against as they go through this monthly situation is cortisol. So cortisol spikes or can spike whenever especially if you're new to cold plunging. And when that happens, it's a hormone that then affects other hormones in the body and can throw off homeostasis in a woman, depending on where she is in her cycle. So I'll let you read the blog, for a more of a deep dive in that.
I love science, and I also understand that science is really just, the Socratic method is about fairness when looking at two sides of a coin, essentially. So the Socratic method in science has become very watered down the more billions and trillions of dollars that get poured into a vested interest on one side. What's really cool about cold therapy and about cold water, you can see on the screen right now, there's this publication, Adaptive versus Toxic Stress. And this removes the biggest objection because we see the results of this study on the screen that people actually had dopamine increase. There was motivation studies with athletes. There's a lot of studies. There's also a medical hypothesis that cold exposure reduces anxiety, aging research, hormesis, longevity. I mean, you name it. There's so many hundreds now, probably multiple thousands of publications when it comes to the neurological impact of cold thermogenesis. If you've ever blown up your life for no logical reason, congratulations. Your biology works. You're not broken. You're just running an old pattern. After 10 years of podcasting and interviewing 800 plus of the sharpest minds and deepest hearts on planet Earth, I built something simple to help you interrupt these patterns fast. I kept running personally into the same stuff, and audience members would write to me and say, Josh, I'm dealing with the same core three things, which are expressed through emotional epigenetics that are our emotional patterns, our unconscious beliefs, and our environment. This self-liberation blueprint is a free training where you get clear on how these three areas are blocking your life. And in 10 days, you can move from being stuck and distorted on the inside to clear and on purpose on the outside. The self-liberation blueprint is a 10-day jumpstart that's perfect for the human being that feels stuck, but they just can't figure out why. Now, I built this with no smoke and mirrors. I know in our world, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors when it comes to personal growth and spiritual development. I built this with 24 years of my own health, wellness, and personal development life experience. So I can save you money and save you time and start getting your results as quickly as possible. On your first day, you're gonna go right into a self-assessment where we know exactly where you are and exactly where you get to be. We're gonna take you through a dream vision process and specific breath work to create your life vision that you desire in the future as if it's here right now. All of this is free because I'm here to give it to you as a mentor in the same way that my mentors gave it to me. It is purely just my gift to you. You also get free access to the Liberated Life Tribe, a community of people like you and I that are actually doing the inner work instead of just pretending that they're fine. By the time you're done, you're going to know exactly where you are in your wellness pentagon, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and financially. And you're going to have a map, a mindful action plan to move from clarity instead of distortion. This is not therapy for people that are broken. You're not broken. You're just bioenergetically burdened. And I'm here to tell you that removing these burdens is possible. And I believe you can do it. You don't need fixing. You just get to have a clear starting point and a plan that actually works with your biology. If you're ready to move forward with your life without forcing it, join me inside the Self-Liberation Blueprint by heading over to liberatedlife.com. Come join us. What's your favorite either scientific understanding or biological truth that you know, not just from reading the literature, if you want to talk about the literature, that's cool, but what's something that you just know to be scientifically true that science feels like is telling you something you already knew?
I knew as a kid that when I got into cold water, I felt great afterwards. I felt alive, And why is that the case? Well, I didn't know any of the science. I didn't know that when I got into cold water, I'm getting a 250% up from baseline dopamine release that lasts not 30 minutes, but for hours and hours after the day. So I know from a practical standpoint that I can do yard work in the Texas summer for an hour and a half and be pretty tired from it and pretty much be like, maybe I should call it a day. Go hit the cold plunge for 5 minutes. I've got 2 more hours of yard work in the heat, completely fine. And you can kind of repeat that cycle. And these are things that we know to be true just from our empirical living life and experiencing this stuff. One of the things I think is really cool, you talked about when you get in cold water, you feel great afterwards.
Every time.
That's something that we just simply know to be true.
Yeah.
From there's a really cool study that was done on the topic of depression, how this can help people feel better, guess what, that also have depression. So in the study, they took a group of participants. It was a randomized controlled trial. They divided them into 2 groups. All participants had already been diagnosed with, clinical depression, and they were on some form of SSRI treatment. So half the group, they just continued on with the status quo as the control group. The other group, they put through a series of cold water immersion experiences where they're doing whole body cold therapy. At the end of the study, they measured a bunch of different biometrics and they measured mood changes. And they noticed that the participants in the cold group actually reported lower symptoms of depression, lower fatigue, and higher sense of overall well-being. Some of them, actually, the study says, were actually able to start to titrate off of their SSRI treatment as well. So really, really powerful natural medicine for depression. There's a famous dude online who I'm good friends with, Cam. Cold Plunge Cam is his name. Great guy, super humble. I think he lives in Utah now. And he's one of those guys that started plunging every single day and posting his plunge. He used to plunge in, I think, the Provo River, right? And it was cold during the winter. And he had, his story, this is very public online, is battling depression. He's battled it for a long time, tried a lot of different medications. And this is like his new medicine. And he's pushing through it. And he's, titrating off of meds. And it's a beautiful real world anecdote and story that you see that played out in the data.
The way we feel better when we get into cold water, it's so much different than hot thermogenesis. Obviously, there's heat shock proteins that are encapsulated in our body that come out when we're in the heat. There's something really magical about the cold. It's why the Finnish, the Scandinavians, the genesis of fjord, right? Can you go into that vernacular? Because I'd never heard of fjord before I met you. What is fjord?
Fjord is simply the Norwegian term for an inlet. And so in Norway, which is one of the places I was plunging at one point, I was traveling a lot to the west coast of Norway, where a lot of the fjords are based. There's only proper fjords in 2 places in the world, which is Norway and New Zealand. And they're in Norway, it's basically Arctic waters coming in from the Arctic Ocean deep into the land. And when I was over there, I was doing a lot of training for triathlon in my personal life. So I would do my training runs, and then there was no swimming pools to swim in where I was. So you just have the option of getting into the fjords, into nature.
Is there like ice chunks in there? Like actual pieces?
Depends on the time of year. Okay. So I was there multiple different times during the year, and the water and air temperature would be really different. But the very first time was in May of 2015. And I went with a Norwegian friend on a weekend over this business trip to go to one of the fjords and swim, because guess what? Like you said, that's what they do.
Yeah.
So we went to this fjord and there was a group of people there, a couple families. walked out on the dock and stood there and just looked down at the water, hesitating to get in. And a little Norwegian girl was standing behind me and says something to me in Norwegian. And my friend who speaks Norwegian just started laughing. And she steps around me and just dives in. And she just said, are you going to stand there and look at the water, or are you going to jump in? And I was like, that's perfect. That's hilarious. Well, if she's in there and having a good time, I'm going to do it too. And jumped in. You get a little of the cold shock. And man, that's kind of when it was born. And, getting into the cold water was different because I began realizing that my soreness from my training runs was going away faster. I was sleeping better at night. And I just felt this energy rush afterwards that really carried for hours into the day. So I kind of fell in love with it.
I could see that little girl just calling you out. And was there other people around like laughing or smiling?
Plenty of people observed my humiliation.
It's so cool that they train their children to get in the fjord, to get in the cold. And here in America, like I have many moments where I've done plunging and my kids see me working out. So like, this phrase we've heard, doing hard things creates hormesis.
Yes.
Like this beautiful response chemically cascading in the body. I think it does a lot more on a social communication basis, because when kids see us do hard things, it unlocks permission for them to do the same. Much like that little girl who probably she wasn't probably being serious, or maybe she was calling you out. Like, are you going to jump or not? The social aspect of cold water immersion and cold thermogenesis to me is like almost even better than the biological. And yes, we're going to talk a lot about the biological today.
Yeah.
But from a social aspect, like that's got to be a huge part about what keeps you and Fjord going in a world of cold plunges that are all from China and that break all the time. So how does the community aspect and bringing people together really encapsulate part of why you're doing what you're doing?
It is a huge part of the ethos of Fjord, is the community and social aspect to it. Cold plunging isn't just something that has to be, hey, I'm doing this by myself in the morning in a militant fashion, and this is the way I start my day because I'm hardcore. It's an opportunity to socialize, to meet with people, to do hard things with people together that bonds people. You can get to know someone. Walls come down when you're in the cold plunge or in the sauna with someone, doing something that's visceral physically, and then really being able to get honest and real with the people that you're around. And I feel like a good contrast therapy session with a friend or a potential business colleague bonds someone and brings you closer together than weeks of coffees or happy hours. You know what I mean?
Sure. Because you know why? Because we're in our bodies. There's actual studies on the redox system. Zach Bush describes it as this 6-foot radius that our body essentially gives and receives electrical information. Like your gut, my enteric nervous system, yours, is figuring out if we're safe. It's figuring out if we're trustworthy. But honestly, just from a human lens, the understanding that the opposite of depression is expression.
Yes.
Right? So if I'm depressed, it means that there's some sort of, if you look at Bessel van der Kolk's work, the body keeps the score. If you look at Michael Edward Johnson's latch theory, essentially the body is the unconscious mind. That's a lot of deep work that has been done by Bruce Lipton as well and Joe Dispenza. So if we know that on a scientific level that my physical body is my unconscious mind, where do my limiting beliefs, where do my self-hatred, where do my drill sergeant behaviors where I speak poorly to myself, where do those live? Those live in my unconscious.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is I believe now, after like 6+ years of doing cold therapy and hot therapy, to me, there is nothing that wakes my body up and resets my mind and my neural tree like doing something that initially I don't really want to do.
Yeah.
But then when I go and do it and how beautiful I feel afterwards, what I'm saying is there's no room, there's no capacity for me to be in rumination anymore.
Right.
Because I've expressed whatever it is in my body, my unconscious, by being in the cold that wanted to come out in the first place.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you straight up, I didn't know I was going to say this. I've cried a handful of times after doing a plunge.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm not shocked.
What I find for my life, and I wonder if you've ever heard this from the Fjord community or yourself, is that first minute of cold, if we can allow ourselves to really breathe deep and to really feel what's actually happening for us, there can be emotional release. There can be catharsis. There can be like actual healing that comes from something so simple as just laying down inside of something with cold water in it. Have you ever felt this yourself? Has anybody told you this? They've had like cathartic releases?
It makes sense. The water? It makes so much sense. Yes. And it makes so much sense because the world that we live in, sometimes all of us are going through life at such a pace and with so much stress or demands that we bury a lot of our true feelings. They're buried and they're hidden.
Absolutely.
And when you get in there, you finally go into the body and you get connected with everything that's inside. And it has a window and a door to come out and get released. And yeah, sometimes you get surprised by what's there.
Have you ever been surprised?
Yeah.
What's a surprise you've had in the fjord?
Oh, let's see. This is kind of probably an unexpected answer here, but I did a cold plunge one time for 20 minutes. I was at home by myself.
Wow.
It was only about 55 degrees, but I just felt good that day. And I felt like I'm going to just stay in a little longer. And I started shivering at about minute 8 at about 8 minutes minus 20. So about 12 minutes.
Yeah.
And I just kind of grabbed the side of the tub and started breathing through it and relaxed, and I stopped shivering. And then I started shivering again at about 15 minutes. And it kind of just continued. So
yeah.
I held the shiver for about 5 minutes. But I still felt fine, like I could have kept going. But during that time, I had this almost like a revelation that came to me that was a deep appreciation for my mom. My mom was a single mom raising us. And I like called her afterwards and just told her how much I love her and appreciate her and everything, and just thought about her. And it was, I'll tell you the vision. This is actually really interesting. So strange. I had this vision that just really almost came upon me of my mom and I on like some sort of like small version of like a Titanic type thing where we go overboard in cold water at night. And I know that she's not a strong swimmer. I know that I am a competitive swimmer. I know that she's not used to cold water. I know that I am used to cold water. But I also know that human beings can be okay for 20 minutes in cold water because I just did it. Let's say we fall in the Pacific Ocean, it's 55 degrees. We got 20 minutes. So I'm coaching my mom in this vision saying, Mom, you got this, swim with me, one more stroke. I promise you it is true that you're going to be okay and you can do this. You know, I've been there, you can do this. It's so strange.
To me, these things that come up, and I felt this, I did a marathon in my late 20s, and I had like a cathartic, I like cried after the marathon. It was like this deep, whenever we go through these peak experiences, Jamie Wheel talks about this a lot in Stealing Fire, about the flow state, like trying to put words to the ineffable, the things that can't always be perfectly explained, but they can only be felt. And I think from a spiritual, emotional lens, cold water, endurance sports, peak athletic experiences, even psychedelic therapy as well. Like there can be a lot of deep healing and catharsis that doesn't need an explanation. It's funny, you even said, isn't that strange? And I'm like, that doesn't feel strange to me. That feels like really fun and cool and loving that you had this connection with your mom in the cold water. To me, it feels like there's just this gaping hole with AI and computers and all the pseudo connection that we have in the world where we have I have 100,000 followers on my Instagram, but like I probably only know 100 of them. They're not really my connections.
Sure.
And even people that are with us right now, like interested in this conversation of the opposite of depression is expression. I don't think it's possible for us to, without one-on-one connection or group connection, without having peak experiences of some sort, to have real catharsis and healing, because I think our mind is always looking for an exact definition of where it's from, how it has to be, and what it's supposed to look like.
Yes.
Instead of just being in the present moment. You know, we've all heard from metaphysical teachers for a long time, like the moment is all we have.
That's right.
The present moment is the present. That's why it's a gift. That's because a present you unwrap.
Oh.
So depression, you mentioned that study, and it's actually on the screen right now, the one from the UK, the study with the UK university students. They did one cold water session in the sea at 55 degrees for 20 minutes. Yeah. Their mood markers, it's on the screen right now if you guys are on Spotify and YouTube. By the way, definitely subscribe because we have really cool visuals and it's a way more fun experience than if you just listen on audio. Mood markers improved right after, including drops in depression, fatigue, and confusion. Literally one session.
One session.
So to me, this is just like, again, it's like we're trying to use science to describe logical ways in which we ineffably experience life. We try to put words on God. We try to explain things that are not always explainable, yet they can only be felt. So what do you believe about science where it's bringing all this research and then the peace in your heart that you felt with the little girl next to the water and the way in which you're using Fjord to bring people together? Seems like to me there's a convergence of science and emotional connection that are both happening uniquely through, I don't know if it's the style of the Fjord, because it is a different type of cold plunge. It's totally different than the other ones out there. What is the sweet spot, or what is like the essence of what I'm trying to describe here. It's the convergence of science, style, and community coming together, but I'd love to hear it from you. There's a nexus point here that all these energetic forces converge upon. How would you describe that?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, we're doing what we were created to do. We're getting into nature. We're getting into water and cold water, different temperatures of air and water. That's what we were created to do. Just a bit of an aside, then I really want to go where you just directed us to.
Yeah.
Which is, I thought about this on the drive on the way over here when I was thinking about why water is so important in being in water. And I thought, this goes back further than, a lot of the stuff we're talking about in Scandinavia and all that. It goes all the way back 2,000 years ago when Jesus chose water to baptize people in. That's the symbol that he thought would make the most sense about becoming a new person, adopting a new identity, and really stepping into a better life was getting into water and submerging all the way in water. I just thought that was, I never noticed that before.
That's so good. I haven't thought about that in a long time.
Going back to what you asked, this is a great question. We have, with the Fjord product specifically and what we've tried and our vision for what this can be in someone's life, we wanted it to be something that was aesthetic, that looked good and was a statement piece that you'd want to have your friends over and create community around and show off in your yards. So that's part of it, right? Let's have this thing out. It's not something that's hidden on the side of the house that I do in the morning by myself. This is a centerpiece of your now entertaining venue that you have for creating gatherings, for community. That is a healthy alternative to other types of gatherings that you could be having, right? I found it, so at our place here in Austin, which I need to have you over soon, and we'll do this. We've got the sauna, the hot tub, we've got a couple of cold plunges set up at different temperatures, outdoor shower. Try to make it a hospitable sort of wellness retreat, if you will. And it has paid for itself 1,000 times over with community. It gives you a new way to entertain and have people over and build quick relationships and quick bonds, not just with friends, but I have business meetings that way. Instead of going in to get a coffee, it's like, hey, you just want to come by the wellness retreat? Let's do a sauna sesh. Let's do a cold plunge. And like you said, the walls come down, the honesty's there, you're bonding, you're talking about real things, you're away from technology, and business gets done in that environment as well. So we wanted to create a product that not only, attracted people to it, served its function of cold, clean water, but also allowed you to have consistency around that. And what breaks consistency is when your cold plunge fails and it stops working, because it doesn't stop working for 2 to 3 days. Right. You're sometimes waiting weeks for an email back, months for a part.
I've been out a month. I've been out over a month before. I'm not going to say who the company was, but y'all can figure it out. A month without it, I notice.
It breaks routine.
A month without it is a lot.
It breaks routine. And, like we talked about doing cold water immersion, it's just one of the tools in a broad tool belt, but it's a really powerful tool to put you into a better state, make you a better person for your friends, for your family, for your business meetings, for your podcast. And when you're not with that, you're without what you're used to for a month in that regard, it actually has a personal, toll on the person, and we want to avoid that. We've gone to great lengths to try and build something that is focusing on the equipment with American-made parts and as reliable as we can. We have 2 pumps, 2 filters, got some redundancy built into the system to try and make it such that people don't have that interruption. So we've tried to make it both beautiful and reliable.
This is really good because I've had so many people on the podcast, either neuroscientists, behavioral psychologists, doctors, and they've all pointed to this fact that willpower is so finite. Someone's willpower to essentially, if you put in the calendar, okay, every single day for the next 30 days, I'm going to cold plunge. We all in the first 2 to 3 days get super pumped. We're like, yeah, we're going to do it forever. We're going to do it for 30 days. And then day 4 comes. And let's say, for example, you're a parent and you're sleep deprived, or you were up all night as a business person doing emails or something. Yeah. The willpower is very finite when it comes to doing something that provides you stress or hormesis. How have you personally gone away from willpower and stacking the environment in your favor instead? Because there's my buddy Sean Stevenson said this 6 years ago, and I just love it. It's not about forcing it. It's about stacking the environment in your favor, such that you have less decision fatigue from a neuroscience perspective.
Absolutely.
How have you done that? And how do you talk to people about, that little bit of resistance we have when it comes to keeping our promises to ourselves about doing the hard things like the cold water that has such a great benefit? How have you structured your environment and stacked your environment in your favor so that you don't have to step into decision fatigue?
First of all, I put the cold plunge in a very visible location. So if you're inside the main part of my house that you live in, there's always windows in the back, and you look out and it's right there in plain view. So it's always visually on your mind that there it is. And it looks kind of nice. It's a green backdrop. And then from there, I also created the environment with a sauna there as well and a hot tub. So I know even if I'm not in the mood for cold, hey, I can go warm up over here. I can heat up first. I can hit the cold. After the sauna, you always want to hit the cold plunge.
Oh yeah.
You know, that
or just being outside in Texas summer for 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to go in the cold plunge.
9 months out of the year for sure. It
Basically.
takes care of itself.
Yeah.
You can't wait, to get home and hit that thing.
Yeah.
So, it's a lot of it is that. Plus we have an outdoor shower. I recommend that. That's the low hanging fruit tip for people too. If you have any kind of contrast setup, or if you're building one, it won't cost you that much to put together a simple outdoor shower, and it will change your life. I showered outdoors this morning, before getting ready for this podcast, and I just felt awake with the sunshine and the water, and you're just kind of in nature.
Have you seen some of this research? We'll make sure we link it in the show notes today about doing cold therapy first before you strength train. Have you read about some of this?
Yes.
This is like a very hot topic for 2026.
Yeah, it's very interesting. They did a study with college track athletes trying to figure this out. Like, is it beneficial to do cold plunge before like hardcore intense training?
Yeah.
And they, of course, did the cohorts and everything, half and half. And they found that the performance of the runners that did cold plunge like 30 minutes before a track workout was better. And they were trying to figure out why and what the conclusion would be. Part of it was the motivation and the belief that they had in themselves, that they can push themselves a little bit harder. Plus, they were probably coursing with norepinephrine and with dopamine and feeling fully turned on. I mean, the body, it's not just your muscles, it's not just your brain and your willpower, but there's also your nervous system recruiting your muscles.
Yeah.
And when you wake your nervous system up in the cold, and then you go do some sort of physical performance, your nervous system is able to recruit all the strength from your muscles.
That's amazing. See, to me, that makes so much sense. Like science reminding us something that we feel anecdotally. And I'm not I'm actually very pro science. I think science it's super fun to learn about all these things. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because if you're doing 2 scoops of pre-workout that have 500 milligrams of caffeine, or if you're trying to motivate yourself to train after having a 32-ounce mega Starbucks caffeine bomb, there's going to be some really big after effects of that, right? And I don't chase the caffeine dragon anymore. I do the paraxanthine now, which is great. It's the downstream derivative of caffeine. But it makes sense for athletes, or just honestly for anybody that struggles with that mental decision fatigue of like, should I work out? Should I not work out? Should I do the cold plunge? Should I not do the cold plunge? I think it's about recapitulating and putting our BTFA loop so that we become attached, not addicted, but attached to this stimuli of increased norepinephrine and serotonin and dopamine and all these catecholamines that happen through the cold. So how do you see this playing out? Is it in the first week, people are going to feel something different for sure? The first plunge, they're going to feel something different. Second week, third week, fourth week, when does somebody really find their cadence to not be in decision fatigue? And when does that part of the brain turn down its volume that says, don't get in the cold water? When have you seen that start to calm down over the use of time?
Can be as soon as 1 week of use, 1 to 2 weeks of like consistent use. Yeah. Because then you start to really build like a pattern around it, and you start to enjoy it a lot more, and opting in becomes easier. I will tell you that it's like we talked about earlier. It's here's a really beautiful mental model that I like to share with people that are coming over to our wellness space, and maybe it's their first cold plunge. And I tell them, all right, I cold plunge all the time. This is maybe your first or second cold plunge. When we both get in this water, this cold receptors in our skin feel the same cold water, and it sends the same signal and stimulus to our brain. It is up to each of us to then assign meaning to that sensation. And you might assign a sensation that's a meaning that says this is dangerous, this is uncomfortable. Yeah. Whereas I legitimately believe and have chosen that, for me, this is refreshing. I reframe it. This feels good. I feel alive. I'm thankful to be in here. And I think it's just like, you just start to choose that, and you start to believe that and see it.
Oh man, for me, I look at things, you've heard that phrase, if you're holding a hammer, then everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
Right now I'm at a current place in my life and I don't care about admitting it. I look at everything as identity transformation right now.
Sure.
Where somebody is, where they want to go. In order for, I was meeting with somebody, I forgot who it was, and somebody's going to message me in the bottom of this video, but we were going over like, what is a coach? Like, what's the definition of a coach? And if you go all the way back, the etymology of the word coach went to like, I believe sometime in the late 1700s at a university, when they were modeling it off of the person that drives the vehicle that would take passengers from one city to another. That was the initial phrase of a coach, right? Like someone riding shotgun, having a coach and buggy. And then it transitioned in the 1800s to someone who was a mentor at a college who would help someone or tutor someone. And now in modernity, it's somebody that helps their client, the coach helps their client get from the lower self to the higher self, or the disempowered self to the super trusting, lovable, I love God, I love life self.
Yes.
And I think that along the way, man, there are so many tools that are needed.
Yeah.
They're just necessary. Like we can't, anytime in my life I've ever tried to do a shortcut on identity transformation, it always turns into a long cut every single time. It's like such a lot. Anytime I try to do a little shortcut or investments or friendships or business or anything, it's like implosion. Yeah. So now at 45, I'm like, okay, let me not take long cuts anymore. With that pre-frame, I'll ask you this. If we were looking at cold therapy as an investment in your health, as a tool set to move through your own identity transformation, if you were to guess, or if you were to sit with it, what part of self-sabotage, what part of disempowerment does cold water specifically help to transcend?
The belief that I can't do this hard thing, whatever it is that's in front of you, if it's a deadline at work, a hard conversation that you should have with a good friend or with your spouse. These are uncomfortable. You're going to discomfort. And when you train yourself with cold water, that's exactly what you're training yourself to overcome and do every day. It's just, I'm going to go and meet the discomfort, not with panic, not with, some feeling of negativity, but that this is an opportunity to grow, baby.
It's surrender.
We got to grow.
It's just surrender. Yeah. Go ahead.
That's it.
I feel like it's surrender.
Yeah.
I feel like so the same reason that prayer and meditation can be so powerful and so healing. How many times have you prayed or meditated where God creator has brought you a message that you would have never received unless you were to spend time in surrender? It just doesn't happen.
It's huge.
Right?
It's huge. Actually, I had a conversation with a good friend of mine the other day. We were coming back from some church thing, some organization thing that we went to. And he said, what do you think really is the turning point that really changes people to be open to, growth, spiritual growth? And I said, surrender. I think it starts there, actually, is just saying, okay, I don't got this, but you do. I know the one that does have the answers.
Yeah, I just get this sense that the cold water is, I've never thought about this before. The cold water is nature at its most refined, purest form. Like lava is nature at its most raw form. Cold water, dirt, trees, sky, like these certain fundamental pieces of the earth, they can't be denied. Like they're irrefutable.
Yes.
And each one of them, like, fire helps to cook food and keep us warm. Cold water has this therapeutic benefit that now modernity is starting to really grok in a way that like 20 years ago, it just wasn't a conversation. But I would say in the past 3 years specifically, it's like everybody knows what it is. Everybody's heard about the benefits.
Yeah.
But the challenge is that we're wanting to connect a bridge between something practical and meaningful that someone who's feeling disempowered or feeling out of sorts or feeling depressed is experiencing. This realistic bridge that's created through specific tools, not just mindset, because you could buy mindset courses, you can go to Tony Robbins, but if you don't have a practical tool set when you get home of like accountability, the way that you put your plunge like right there so you could see it, it's going to be really challenging to have that bridge be walked. So my question for you is, how do we make this practical in a way where somebody can do this and be excited about doing it and have it be a real piece of medicine? I know this isn't medical advice, but have it be a real healing piece of medicine for them on an everyday basis. In other words, how do we slant our mind towards being, in surrender of where we are? Maybe we're depressed or sad or we're in a tough spot in our life. What is that? Not motivation. What is that inspiration that we can touch upon that'll allow us to make cold therapy an everyday thing.
Well, it's just like anything else in life that you want to be successful at. If you go at it independently and in isolation, it's always harder. So going through it with a community, so you could, I typically like to cold plunge with people, and I'm very social and I'm pretty busy. So, I always need to meet with people, and I'll always double those two things together. It's kind of like what Eric Hinman does with Muscle Mountain. He's like, all right,
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
He's like, people want to hang out. And he's like, well, then come join me for sauna and cold plunge.
Yep.
That's kind of what I do here in Austin too, is just always have people over. So the community aspect then pushes me to do it. It gets me excited about it. You can also do this virtually, right? We've created forums online before where people can do cold plunge challenges, and they post their time and they post a little picture or a video, and sometimes they win things from Fjord and all that stuff, and just kind of getting people engaged and excited. So, having some accountability around it, like all these things really help.
Yeah. I heard once, I forget who it was. I get a lot of information on these podcasts, and it's like, sometimes it's a lot for me to remember, but the stuff that's really good, it's like borrowed wisdom that I don't always have to credit the person who said it for. So what I'm about to share with you is something just like that. She said, it was actually a pastor's wife from California, and I'm forgetting her name right now. But she said, the reason why people struggle with self-doubt, self-sabotage, even self-hatred is because our unconscious mind is always listening to the promises that we don't keep to ourselves.
Wow.
And it's like my hair on my arm stands up for that, because I think we all can feel that, right? Like the promises that we make, yet the promises that we don't keep, they can, if we're not conscious, they can start to push us down into shame.
Yes.
And then I reflect upon Allison Armstrong, who sat right there, and she said, my message to all men is that shame is what makes you honorable. Your ability to feel shame and to process your emotions is part of what makes you honorable, because from shame can come courage and acceptance and love, right? But if we don't feel the tough stuff, the stuff that's dense or dark or uncomfortable, it's actually scientifically impossible, because emotion is energy in motion.
Yes.
So if my energy is not in motion and it stays stuck, well, then I'm just going to ruminate and ruminate and ruminate. So my question for you is this: from a confidence building standpoint, what would you stack next to cold therapy as its ability to challenge you just enough that when you do it, you're proud of yourself for keeping your promise?
Public speaking.
Oh yeah.
That's really challenging. And it's the same type of, I don't want to go on that stage. I don't want to get in that cold water.
I guess they are fairly similar at the beginning, huh?
That could be.
I've never thought about that. Yeah.
Could be for a lot of people. I mean, my past career, I did a lot of professional public speaking and consulting, and just became more and more natural at it. And I think also this is really tied in, actually. The truth of what I'm going to say is that what I noticed over doing consulting for like 15 years, having to be in front of clients and stuff, took me years to really get here, was that, wow, I'm going to perform so much better and enjoy this so much more if I just go up there and realize I'm going to make eye contact. I'm just connecting with other humans who are wondering who I am and why I'm here. And we're just going to have fun together. And I'm going to ask a lot of good questions, and just became so much more relaxed than thinking, oh, here it is. I'm in a position like you just start to just be more real and authentic, and everyone feels better.
Yeah. It's like we're dealing with either honesty or hiding. That's what it feels like in life.
Yes.
We're either like going for it and just being us, or we're holding a mask up and we're creating stories as to why we can't, for lack of a better term, like invest in a fjord, or go talk to the girl we like, or go do the public speaking. Like, I just feel like God creator brings us all these choices in our life. And we either have the courage to do the thing that we want to do, or we don't. And I find that when we don't, it's typically because of an unconscious belief set that informs us that we can't.
Yes.
So it's not that we say, oh, I'm not going to do that. It's that underneath that is, I don't think I'm worthy of doing it. I don't think that I'm capable of doing it. There's a lot of really crunchy, dense, lower level self-talk that happens. And I've definitely felt this in my life. I'm the only person in my family, love my family, they did the best they could, who hasn't taken SSRIs. I'm the only one.
Wow.
My mom struggled with that. She still takes it. At some point, I think most of the people in my family took SSRIs. And I think of this as like a spiritual sickness where we spend money on alcohol and hundreds of dollars on a weekend trying to impress people that we don't love, that we don't really care about. And it's just like, this sickness that keeps perpetuating.
Yes.
And I feel like it's on the screen right now, joshtrent.com/fjord. And by the way, thank you so much for the hookup. It's code Josh. You're giving people 10% off and free shipping. Like, now's the time if you're feeling this, because goodness gracious, we are spending our money in such terrible places that actually take away our health.
Yes.
And if you click the link on the screen, if you feel what we're talking about right now, there's payment plans. You can pay however you need to pay so that you can make an investment in something that actually gives you life force energy instead of taking it away. Have you considered this, the choice point between making investments in healthy food, making an investment in the Fjord, making investments in yourself are actually they're an identification piece. They're saying, I'm worthy enough for this choice. Do you find that's true for you personally and the people that invest?
Yes. And think about this analogy, right? It's people that are trying to get themselves into better health. What's one of the really foundational things that we can do to achieve that most people know this, which is get a good night's sleep, right? Let's get a good night's sleep, and or a few in a row, we're going to feel great. What does that require? That requires 7, maybe 8 hours of your day in bed. You can change your state and improve your health in 4 minutes in a cold plunge, right? 3 to 5 minutes in a cold plunge. It doesn't take 8 hours investment in order to change your life. I mean, this is the lowest hanging fruit. There's no opportunity cost. It's not like, well, I can't go to kids' soccer practice. I can't do this other thing. You have time to incorporate cold water immersion into your life, regardless of how busy you are, because it just doesn't take long to do it. Making the investment up front to get, for example, a Fjord Cold Plunge, get something that's going to be reliable, beautiful, and you're going to want to get in this thing that's available to you all the time, and just make that easy. That upfront investment will then change your life for no cost.
Yeah, it's crazy. Literally, I used to, in my 20s, I would spend $100, $200, maybe even $300 on a weekend. And you all know I'm telling the truth. If you're in your 20s and you're stuck in that unconscious loop of partying and trying to impress people that don't really care about you, and you're spending $1,000 a month. I mean, it's like, it's a real thing. There is some data about millennials drinking less, which I celebrate for sure. But I think when we look at the money we spend is a direct correlation of how we either love and care for ourselves, or we're trying to impress people because we feel like we're not worthy.
Yes.
To me, water, we get our water delivered, super healthy water. We eat organic food. Like, everything we buy is organic. Are we 80-20 on that? For sure. But like 80% of the time, my kids are eating organic food, and so are we. So I make these investments, right? But I also don't invest my money in things that I know, once I've learned about them, take away my life force vitality. So this is really this is not just an economic decision. For me, this is a decision of my life, of my longevity, of my ability to be present with you, to be with my wife and my children, and just be a good human being. But it really boils down to, I think for me, all these investments just boil down to, do I care about myself enough to spend money that I work for, right?
Yes.
I earn money, I work for. Do I care about myself enough to make a worthwhile investment in something that has a massive upside and that will always keep paying me for 5 to 10 years? And I think for me, it's like a no-brainer. Like, I would never have a life where I didn't have a Fjord at home, where I didn't have cold water at
Most
home.
people that get a cold plunge, then they feel the same way because they've experienced it, and they're like, I wouldn't want to not be with one now. I think that's really true. Yeah. And we can make it easy for people. We have payment plans that allow you to just pay it over time and stuff like that, just like a gym membership, right? So it's not something that you have to save up, $7,000 to experience in your life. But and the other thing too is, I don't know how we want to link this or talk about it, but I'm the founder of Fjord. I work on it pretty closely and intensely. We've got a great team that's supporting us, some really all-star guys that really, really care about the mission. If anybody listening wants to just talk to me more about partnerships or, learn more about the product, you can we'll somehow link my contact information. You can get a hold of me, and I'd love to talk to anybody that's interested.
That's very admirable. Yeah, we'll put your contact there. So they're below the video where you're watching this too. I want to talk about this because I'm not here to throw shade on other people, but I am here to describe something different that I felt from you and Fjord. And that is the way in which these materials are built and sourced. This is actually a really important thing. We all use Amazon. I do it too, where we'll buy something cheap. And then I notice that like after a year or two, I'm buying it again, especially my kids' little trucks. His like motorized trucks. Every 1 or 2 years, I'm buying him like a new truck. I'm like, maybe I should just actually invest. That hit me this Christmas. I was like, let me just invest in like a more expensive one that I don't have to replace. Yeah. That is 100% what I feel from Fjord. I will share y'all that, not going to name the company, literally over 7-8 times, there have been pipes that break, things that go wrong over the course of 5 years to where I just said, you know what, like, what else is out there? And then our buddy Justin introduced me to you, and I learned about the way in which your products are made. The ultimate kicker that I'd love for you to share is that we don't have to bathe in chemicals. All the other cold plunges on the market, you have to put chemicals and all this phytoestrogens in the water. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You figured out a way where we don't have to put chemicals in the water in the fjord. How did you figure that out?
We went through a whole testing journey of different types of chemicals, minerals, sanitation solutions. We tried UV, we tried ionizers, we tried chlorine, of course, and like bromine and some different things. And what we discovered was the cleanest, healthiest option was just simply O3. So using an American-made ozonator, which is what we use, that you just drop something in the water. It ozonates the water for 30 minutes or an hour a day. That's it. You take it out, and suddenly, bacteria, algae, all that stuff, you can keep water much longer. I mean, 6-7 times as long before you need to, drain it and stuff like that. And so it keeps water longevity. And you're not bathing in chemicals, which most people really kind of want to avoid.
Yeah.
So we've chosen ozone. There's one other solution that I've been in testing with and started to actually create some belief in myself in doing, or some belief in this product. There's some people that I met that I've now created a good relationship with called H2O Pure. And it's all natural. So it's just copper, zinc, and silver. And they've been using that kind of stuff to keep water clean for a long time. It's potable. It was originally used to put into drinking water in Africa to make it potable. Right. And so that stuff actually is pretty good too. But ozonator is really kind of gold standard.
Yeah. And I love, we got a saltwater conversion on our pool here. And before that, it's like my kids' hair was turning green. It was kind of, our skin would smell. And then I started to realize that in order for me to keep up my previous cold plunge, I had to put chemicals in it like almost every week. Because I have guys over and we'll do it together, like the community aspect, right? Yeah. And I was putting all these chemicals in there, and I'm like, I had a mentor come over. His name was Paul Check, and he's like, yeah, be careful. Like, actually don't do the plunge when you put the chemicals in there. Like, let it run for a day, because these chemicals are not good for you. They're not good for your skin. They're not good for your body. So shout out to you for figuring this out, because I don't know any other plunges that can stay clean without chemicals.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
You're a man of water. And I think about the way in which water is so healing. And I don't know if somebody's scientific, if they're spiritual, if they're working through something, we just can't deny the fact that water is so powerful. Yes. Without it, we die. It's so healing for our bodies. And the way in which cold water, that science and also this conversation in researching it and preparing for you showed me, is that water is this really natural reset for information. The hard drives of the future, I don't know if you've read this or heard about this. It's been said that the most powerful hard drives in the future will be water-based. Really fascinating, especially if you look at quantum computing with the superposition of ones and zeros. Yeah. I think about how water is the storage of information, or Emoto's work when it comes to the way in which water crystals are fed negative vibes or negative words, and then they structure in this very violent way. But yet Emoto in his water study showed that when you speak love into these water particles, that they form these beautiful crystalline structures.
Oh, yes.
So Emoto's work, right?
I saw that.
If you can just set an intention for your life and then start to make all these really amazing changes that actually restructure the water inside of you,
wow,
then you become this example for other people to do the same. Not from an egoic sense, not from like, well, I cold plunge and I'm better than you. That's not what I'm talking about. Yeah. I guess what I'm really saying is can you give us parting guidance here on the people that are practically dealing with life and expenses and all the things that may make them make up mental stories about why investing in their health through cold therapy is not worth it? Can you share the people that have invested, what they've said about it being worth it?
Yeah. I mean, we try and collect these stories and testimonials, right? And over you start to hear the same song, the same theme, which is, man, it's not the same. It's so much better than it was before. Yeah. My motivation's better. My energy's better. My attitude is better. I feel better. This one chronic pain that I've had for a long time, it's gone. I'm sleeping better. Oftentimes some people will ask me, like, Stephen, what's the number one thing that you notice as a benefit from cold plunging? So there's like all this stuff that's happening invisibly under the surface that I don't notice. I don't know is happening. I don't notice it happening.
Yeah.
The activation of brown fat, all those types of things. But for me, sleep, I notice that. If I get a good cold plunge in, for me personally, in the afternoon or early evening, a couple hours, 3 hours, 4 hours before bed, then I will sleep. I'll get, according to my Oura ring, I'll get more deep sleep that night. My heart rate variability will be higher. And my biometrics just look better. So we're actually in the early stages of planning an app. I was meeting with one of the software guys yesterday that will be able to read your cold plunges, knowing the temperature, duration, time, date, pair that with your API integrations into Oura, Apple Health, all that stuff. And you can then map out a custom protocol of what cold plunge, duration and frequency for me actually yields the best sleep or yields the best HRV or whatever. So we're trying to help people track that. I don't know that exists on the market yet.
Sounds super nerdy and fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For people like me. Exactly.
That's really cool, man. Thank you so much for following this path, for being inspired by that little girl, that said, are you going to jump in the cold water?
I know.
Because you could have gone the other way. You could have stayed in your traditional job, and we all make these choices in life is what I'm saying. And it's the choices that we make when things are really hard and when we're met with our own disempowerment, or even when we're met with challenges in the world. I think that's just the quality of our life.
Yes.
So thank you for making the choice to do this. It's not the easiest industry, but we really appreciate the discount. It's on the screen again, joshtrent.com/fjord. And the O has a little line in it. Is that
the Norwegian O?
The Norwegian O. If you don't have to put that line in it, you can just type FJORD, joshtrent.com. You can go to the Fjord website as well.
Yes.
The code is Josh. It's 10% off and free shipping, which is amazing for a very limited time. So thank you for that. I know it's definitely not inexpensive to create these Fjord plunges. And I just thank you for the work you're doing in the world, man. It's a lot more metaphysical and scientific and also emotional than people even know. And I think after this conversation, we all have a bit more honesty and a bit more education about what water actually does for the human body.
Yeah. So I learned a lot of things from you too. Thank you very much for having me on. And Justin, shout out. Thanks for introducing me.
Yeah, Justin Nault.
Yeah.
Thank you, Justin. Well, guys, share this podcast. Go check out the materials over at the Fjord website. What is the actual Fjord website?
It's just fjordcoldplunge.com.
That's on the screen right now. But if you want to get that special hookup, it's on the screen as well for a limited time.
Yes.
Share this podcast with somebody that is ruminating in depression or is in fear of the future. And maybe it's somebody that's successful, like a successful entrepreneur, or, a person who has high levels of achievement, yet their wife doesn't want to spend time with them, or their kids don't want to be around them, or they're just not fun to be around.
Yeah.
Just send them this show. Just be like, hey man, you should check out this podcast.
Yeah.
These conversations are worthy of sharing. So if you're feeling that, let that inspiration guide you to your step of sharing and receiving and making an investment in something that's so good for you, and letting go of the alcohol and the crappy food that's costing you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month anyways.
Right.
It's all just choices, man. So thank you for being my guest.
My pleasure.
Until we see you guys again next week, I'm wishing you love, wellness, but most importantly, which we talked about a lot today, doing the work of surrender to be in peace, because I think that real power or agency comes from peace. So I'm wishing you peace first and power followed right after that. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Have a great one.